This is a 4-part series covering the story and lore of each member of the Fantastic Four, starting off with Johnny Storm. And this is the story of Marvel Rivals. So moving on to the Human Torch's lore, we have teenager Johnny Storm joined his sister on the crew of an experimental space missions in the hopes of visiting the stars. Instead, he became one, gaining powers and popularity as a member of the world's famous Fantastic Four. Able to generate scorching flames, Johnny is the hottest hero in town, the Human Torch. Since darkness fell on New York City, Johnny has been busy burning Dracula's legions with flames brighter than the sun. So let's get into it. Let's cue that story music. The first story is called Fire Exemption Test. Johnny Storm saw a vampire skulking along the edge of Bryant Park and did what he always did on such an occasion, lit it up like a Roman candle. Then he saw another one trying to get away around the corner onto 5th Avenue. Boom, that one was gone too. He did this every night or every day. It was hard to tell what time it was in Dracula's New York because the sun never came up and the moon always hung low and red seemingly right over Grand Central. Either way, the Human Torch kept the area near the Baxter Building as free of vampires as he could. That meant a lot of vampires had gone up in smoke because of him, and that in turn meant that Johnny Storm was currently #1 on Dracula's hit list. The vampire-in-chief had sent some of his top lieutenants after Johnny, veterans of the cult of the Darkholders, but either Johnny had lit them up too, or he had gone away before they could get a bite on him. Vampires couldn't bite you when you were made of superheated plasma. That was one of the reasons why he went out on these patrols every day. He was safer than most New Yorkers from the threats of vampires, which made him especially well suited to vampire population control, especially in the area around the Baxter Building, which was uncomfortably close to Dracula's castle. Johnny did this because he didn't want vampires around the Baxter Building, but also because he knew that smoking so many vampires right around the castle, for where Dracula would watch, was like waving a big old middle finger at the vampire lord. He might have stopped time and imprisoned New York in a weird eternal blood moon night, but that didn't mean New Yorkers were just going to give up. Johnny stayed in the air, heading south of Madison to make sure no masses of undead monsters were gathering in that direction. Although he thought Ben Grimm was doing his own sweeps of the section of Park Avenue south of Dracula's castle, probably vampires couldn't bite Ben either, but Johnny wanted to make sure. They couldn't afford to lose him. There were so many vampires, so many monsters, and not nearly enough superheroes left to defend the innocent from them. Blade was around, Moon Knight, the Scarlet Witch. Pretty quickly, Johnny ran out of names. Oh, there was also Spider-Man, of course, one of Johnny's oldest friends. He stayed to fight vampires, but he was also dying to get back across the East River and see what Aunt May in Queens was doing. New York wouldn't be New York without him. Johnny decided to angle over to Park and see if Ben was staying out of trouble. He hadn't seen any vampires in a few blocks. As he swooped diagonally over the shadowed buildings lining Park Avenue, he heard an echoing boom and saw a column of smoke blast upward from the center of the street. As it cleared, Johnny saw something so crazy that it took him a minute to convince himself it was actually real. The creature that tore its way up through the street was a midnight blue in color, maybe 10 times the size of an elephant, had 3-digit pincers instead of hands, and moved like a dinosaur in the old stop-motion monster movie. It was one of the deviant mutates the Fantastic Four had run into on their first mission together, way back when. Mole Man had a whole stable of bizarre creatures ready to unleash on the world. Johnny remembered this one because it was made of stone, but somehow still moved, kind of like Ben Grimm now that he thought about it. And now here it was tearing a huge hole in Park Avenue, revealing a destroyed subway tunnel below, and a cavern below that. As he got a better look at it, Johnny realised that something was different about it, and its surprise appearance suddenly made a lot more sense. Its eyes, he saw, burned with the empty glow you saw in lower level vampires, the minions Dracula and the other more powerful vampires created at will. So not only was it a giant rock monster, Johnny thought, it was a giant vampire rock monster. Clearly Dracula was sick of just throwing more and more humanoid vampires at Johnny. He decided to take a different tack. This was a problem. Johnny couldn't burn it. so he wasn't sure at first how to fight back as the creature smashed its way up Madison Avenue towards the Baxter building. It bared stony fangs and snapped at Johnny, who veered out of the way, streaking its side with fire to no effect. Holy smokes, he thought, was it a vampire now too? How did they even bite this thing? Johnny wondered out loud. It was made of stone. If you couldn't burn it, how could a vampire bite it? The creature swiped at Johnny, missed, and brought its gigantic pincers down on the street hard enough that manhole covers came up and down Madison Avenue, and they flew up into the air like giant spinning coins. From the corner of 33rd, Ben Grimm charged into view. "Torch, you just draw trouble wherever you go," he growled. "Vampires ain't bad enough?" "This one's a vampire too," Johnny called back, as the creature bared stone fangs and snapped at Ben. The thing swatted its jaws to the side and tried to stomp it back into the hole it made. "Crazy," he shouted. "This town's gone to heck in a handbasket since Dracula came along." The monster shook Ben off and tried to spring at him, but for a guy made out of orange rocks, Ben Grimm was fairly nimble. He got out of the way. What were we going to do about it? This was a good question. Johnny couldn't burn it, so the best thing they could do was what Ben was trying to do: put it back in its hole and make sure it didn't come out again. The monster snapped at Johnny again as he swooped close, harrying it, and it might have gotten to him too if a taut cable of spiderwebbing hadn't thwipped out of nowhere and pulled its head to the side. "Hey Torch," Spider-Man called out as he swung into view. "My spidey sense have been tingling like crazy for the last 10 minutes. Now I know why." "You're just in time," Johnny answered as he distracted the monster again by sweeping close to its snapping jaws and then narrowly avoiding its pincers, which stabbed through the air where it had just been a second before. "Get some webs on it, Pete. I'm going to dive under it." "You gonna what?" the thing echoed incredulously. "Easy," Johnny said. "Pete gets it hanging over the hole, I get underneath it, then break the webs and I'll help it down into the hole." "From underneath?" the thing echoed again. "Trust me," Johnny said as he dodged another pincer. "It can't break my webs," Spider-Man said. "They're too strong." "Can I?" the thing asked. "I don't remember even trying." "Maybe," Spider-Man wondered. "I'd hate to plan on it, you know?" Yeah, Johnny had had a thought. "Ben, if you can't break the webs, you can just tear off a part of the building they're stuck to, right?" "Sure," Ben said. "We forgot one thing. I can't climb like him," jutting a rocky thumb at Spider-Man, "and I can't fly like you." Johnny glanced over at Spider-Man and saw that Pete was reaching the same conclusion he was. "I think we can work around that," he said. "Oh no," Ben said. "I don't wanna." But Spider-Man had already snapped a web onto his back and started swinging him up into the air. More webs followed, binding the monster to the upper corners of the building on both sides of Park Avenue, so it hung in the middle, half in and half out the hole it had made. Here was the hard part, Johnny thought. He had to get the monster to stay in one place, and the best way to do that was to offer himself up as bait. So he dove underneath it, and the monster pounced. Both its pincers clamped down on Johnny, not hurting him much but keeping him pinned as the monster bared its fangs. Here's where he thought he would find out if he was right that vampires couldn't bite superheated plasma, Johnny thought. He focused and felt his temperature get hotter, then hotter still, then so hot that the subway tracks and the concrete pillars inside the room station started to buckle. "Now, Ben," he shouted. Up above, Ben Grimm tore Spider-Man's webs away from its anchor on the corner of the office tower. Maybe a cubic yard of brick, and the concrete came with it, tumbling down to crash on the monster's stone carapace. And Johnny Storm went Nova. The vast mass of stone monster blocked most of the Nova blasts from the surging upward and out into the street. The blast wave radiated downward into the tunnel carved by the stone deviant, on its way up from the deep caves where it originated, melting stone along with the reinforced concrete of the subway tunnel. The monster couldn't burn, but the shock of the Nova blast stunned it and let Johnny break free. He shrieked up out the hole as it collapsed over the monster, which tumbled into the bottomless cavern it had crawled out of just a few minutes before. Molten asphalt, steel and stone sealed the hole, cooling quickly into a huge pit in the middle of Park Avenue. "Whew," Johnny thought. "Flame off," he said, and dropped onto the street. Ben lowered into view on the end of one of Spider-Man's webs. "This is humiliation," he said. "Couldn't have done it without you, Benji," Johnny grinned. As the thing's feet hit the pavement, Spider-Man swung down and landed next to him. "Pretty neat trick," he said. "Yeah, not bad," Johnny said. "All about teamwork." "You ever heard of Vampire Rock Monster?" Ben was looking at the pit. Then his wonderment was replaced by typical pessimism. "It might come up again, you know." Johnny looked down at the wreckage, then up at Park Avenue towards Dracula Castle. "Yeah," he said, "I know. This isn't a war we're going to win tonight, but it's a war we're going to win." The longer he looked at Dracula's castle, the more Johnny imagined he could see Dracula looking back at him. cold and angry at the failure of his latest scheme to extinguish the Human Torch once and for all. He loved it. Come and get me, he dared the distant vampire lord, if you've got the guts. So what we learned there from the Human Torch's first story arc is that he's going around New York City, destroying all the vampires he can see, evaporating them. You've got the Thing, who's also moving around, doing his sweeps of the roads, trying to fight off anything to protect people. We know that Johnny Storm is the #1 on Dracula's hit list to be, killed, I would guess, KO'd. And, Johnny Storm's doing a good job of evading it. We know he's close friends with Spider-Man, which is how it is in the comics, and Spider-Man comes out to help him out, so it'd be good to see their interactions going further. And Spider-Man wanted to get back to Queens to check on Aunt May. So yeah, I mean, there's some good things we picked up there. And with that rock monster being turned into a vampire, it's interesting to see if that was just a Darkhold spell. But yeah, that pretty much covers off what we know so far about Johnny Storm and the Human Torch in this story. If you did enjoy this video, please leave a like, subscribe for more to help us hit 1,300 subscribers. As I said, coming up next is Reed Richards in the next video, and then we'll follow it up with The Thing, ending with Invisible Woman in this story. Moving on after that, we'll be covering Black Panther's new story that's been unlocked, and we'll be doing a full Season 1 story. So guys, if you did enjoy this video, like I said, please hit the subscribe button, leave a comment down below on what you think about Johnny Storm's story, and leave a comment on what you're looking forward to next story-wise, and I will make a video on it. So yep, I've been Az, you guys have been awesome. This has been the story of Marvel Rivals, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.